Now, our next speakers are Bill Tara and Marlene Watson-Tara, and they're going to focus more on the practicalities of diet, but also what we're going to do to change the world. So, Bill and Marlene, up you come, please.
First of all, thank you, Muir and Leslie, for the kind invitation today to allow Bill and I to share our passion for a healthy world, especially on our teaching of ancient wisdom. In actual fact, Bill has celebrated 60 years just last month of teaching macrobiotics. So our philosophy is based on the culture of ancient wisdom from the Asian cultures of Japan, China. Myself, I'm heading towards 50 years teaching this work. I studied very young to be an acupuncturist, but then I get into the food, and that's been my life's work. So we look at longevity and aging from what we have on our plate 3 times a day.
Absolutely. And people often ask us, where do we get our ideas, or where do we get our information from? And there are 3 things that we kind of process with our work. One of them is Western nutrition, conventional nutrition. The other is common sense, right? Are things practical? And the third is what we call ancient wisdom. And these have to do with the wisdom traditions of the world as aligned by the United Nations. These wisdom traditions represent over 2,000 years of experience, human experience. When people talk about, well, is there science on this? Are there studies? Well, yeah, there's studies that go back 2,000, 3,000 years. And these are studies that observed and experienced and recorded information about how we relate to the environment and what that has to do with health. So they come from all over the world, and they're based always on kitchen medicine. Kitchen medicine lies at the base of every traditional system. Right? What's the food? In fact, one of the oldest medical books in existence is called Dr. Yin's Book of Soup. It was a classic of Chinese medicine, soup.
So food doctors, we have, many students from around the world study with us. We've lived in 7 countries. We've moved 21 times. We're back in the UK. Who knows what's going to open up, but we're very excited. And for me, the food is key, as I said earlier. But we have to look at the principles of how do we create longevity in a healthy fashion. Look at the simple facts, right? We have, first of all, diet, movement, of course, sleep, nature, family, and community. But homeostasis is the elusive state we all look for every day. We want to feel balanced. Balanced with what? Balanced with nature, balanced with our environment. Look at the seasonal needs that we're all looking for every day.
And at the basis of all of that is prevention. If you don't have emergency care, you want to prevent. And so all of the traditional ancient medicines are based really on prevention. Right? And this is typified by the quote that's up here on the screen, and that is, you don't wait to dig a well when you're thirsty, right? And so we start out with what we call the macrobiome. And the macrobiome is the whole planet. It has to do with the living and non-living earth. How we relate to that, because that is the fundamental of health. It's a fundamental issue of health, how we relate to the environment.
So the microbiome, the ecology of is what Bill's saying about planet Earth. So we decided on our last book, we wrote Mr. Macro, Mrs. Micro, because I work constantly with the microbiome, with our students and clients. And the microbiome is the biggest, most intimate connection we have with the outside world, whether it's our local environment or the global environment.
And one of the biggest problems that we face has been talked about already by previous speakers, and that is we're trying to adapt to an environment that is made by us. It's not a natural environment. It's what we call a synthetic environment. And we don't fit. That environment doesn't fit with our body. It doesn't fit with our physical needs. We keep trying to push into it. So we're trying to put a round peg in a square hole.
And that synthetic world is what's creating all the disease, the dysbiosis in the gut. The rebellion in the gut is so profound, it's talking to us every day. And as you all know from Hippocrates, one of the most famous sayings of his was, all disease begins in the gut.
So we have to start with gut health. And this is the absolute basis. Food is the absolute basis of all traditional systems.
And ancient wisdom and the microbiome, as we know daily, day in and day out, gut health is fundamental to ancient wisdom. It's not a new word. It's not the new kid in the block. In fact, the first Western use of microbiome was back in the early 50s, and then coming into the 80s, it was used much more profoundly, and now it's kind of everywhere. You'll see it on the internet, the microbiome. It's the kind of key word at the moment, but it's from ancient wisdom.
For the last 20 years, there's been this explosion of studies that have been happening on the biome. And the biome is an internal environment, and it's important to realize that. It's created by billions of microorganisms working together for our health. And it's comprised of both symbiotic and pathogenic microorganisms. And we have to make sure that there's a balance in there, because this is the soil that we grow out of.
And as they say in the old Japanese proverb, soil and man, not two, we are one, we eat from the soil.
And so the gut biome, it's our extra organ. Now, people started looking at what happens down here as actually an organ of the body. It's not separate from us. It's a community that lives within us, but it's not separate with us. It's constantly interacting, and it has certain requirements. One of the requirements is it requires plant fiber. It absolutely has to have that fiber, otherwise it rebels, right? It doesn't recognize it as food. And it requires a certain amount of biological diversity, right? So there has to be fiber, but that fiber has to be diverse fiber from different sources.
And we always say, you know, aging is, as we go back to the gut again, but 70 to 80% of your immune system is actually living in your gut. And if you're not aware of that, you know, people come down with colds and flus and bugs and all sorts. Oh, well, it's seasonal flu, I get this. You shouldn't really. If you have a strong immune system, you know, we travel all over the world teaching, and to be honest, I think in 30 years I've never seen Bill with a sneeze, right? So we got to think about the biome all the time, and it's constantly working to reduce inflammation. It's improving your cognition, and it makes you feel good, right? If you have a lot of depression or sadness, always look at your biome, because it gives you the answer.
And we kind of don't want to really look at the fact that this is also what goes on in our gut is controlling what goes on in our brain. This connection is phenomenal, right? The intestinal system, the nervous system in the intestines is constantly communicating with the brain, and the information is flowing both ways. And this is where 90% of the serotonin in the body is created, in the intestines, right? 40% of the dopamine in the intestines. And these are so-called feel-good hormones, right? So when you feel good down here, you feel good up here, right? And we completely neglected that. It's almost like we cut the head off and put it someplace else, rather than considering it part of the body.
Because we always say, what you eat doesn't stop here, right? Straight up to the brain.
And this is all through the vagus nerve, and you don't want to get Marlene started on the vagus nerve, because she'll talk all day about it.
Okay, so how do we crack the code to aging? Because primarily that's what we want to discuss with you. We have to understand what is affecting cellular aging right now. Now, there's another word that's out there all the time, inflammaging. And just to simplify it, it just means chronic, low-grade inflammation that's building up week on week, year on year, decade on decade. And if you keep on top of that chronic inflammation, you're going to age much easier with better health. So we always say to our students and clients to think about this for a second. Do you know we spend up to 80% of our life digesting food? I mean, it's phenomenal. So when you're not eating, your body's cleaning. But when you're eating, you're constantly assimilating, you're constantly digesting food. So we use a 16-hour feeding window. We eat early in the evening when we can, usually 6, 7 o'clock max, and then we kind of have that 16-hour window. And that's what we do with our students and clients as well. And that helps to kickstart autophagy, which is another word that's important towards healthy aging. We've got to clean out the cells all the time.
This is like, you know, when you have problems with your computer, when it's running slow, I hate to use these kind of analogies, but we must sometimes, right? People tell you to clean out your cache, right? You have to clean out all those programs that aren't working. Well, the body has the same kind of phenomena happening. These are what we call zombie cells. They're cells that are alive, but they don't do anything. They just sit on the couch all day. And the body has a chance of kicking those out. And they only do it when we're not digesting, right? When we stop digesting, the body starts cleaning itself out and getting rid of all of that. And when you do this, it strengthens the telomeres in the body, and the telomeres are incredibly important, right? These are the ends of the chromosomes, and the chromosomes are like a blueprint, a compact blueprint of how you live. If those telomeres start to get short, you're in trouble. You're starting to die. You're working toward death. You're getting old. Mm-hmm. If you eat a good diet, the telomeres have a chance to renew and regenerate, and they stay long, right?
And then the mitochondria are the same again. It's like the nucleus of the cell right in here. This is where we're producing energy, these little organelles. And again, that comes from eating a healthy plant-based diet, which is what we teach, of course. And ancient wisdom called this purging excess.
Getting rid of excess. Now, we're not really big on food pyramids, and we're not really big on pie charts about what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat and balances. But we've developed this pyramid so that we can give our students an opportunity to see the diversity that's there in eating a plant-based diet. So, and this is important to remember. These are the foods that we evolved with over the last 10,000 years. This is where 90% of the population of the world has eaten over that period of time. So these are grains and beans and vegetables and nuts and seeds. They're the foods that people lived on. And these are the foods that your body recognizes, these are the foods that we need. These are the foods that we want. Right? So are there exceptions to that? Of course. People lived up in the North Pole, you're not going to get many grains and beans, right? So you've got to eat a sea lion, right? But when you're living in the area where most of the people in the world live, which is slightly below the equator and up to the Tropic of Cancer, this is what people are eating. And water, right? That should be included as a nutrient.
Absolutely, one of the most important nutrients, because I always say you're either a plum or a prune. You're a plum when you're born, you're this juicy little plum, and then we dry out and become like prunes as we age, you know. So for me, healthy aging is empowered by your plate, right? Ancient Foods for Modern Cooks is a workshop that I'm very passionate about teaching. And again, we use the culture of just general, you know, grains, beans, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, etc., etc.
So a diet is evolving now in a particular way, and that is that we have to be able to merge and fuse all the information, traditional information from around the world, and put it together so that we can really have a diet which is a universal diet.
Global fusion.
Global fusion. There you go.
So CookFit is a program that I've been teaching for many decades. I've been teaching yoga for over 50 years. And whether we're working in schools or we're doing community projects, we were up in the Scottish Highlands there, which was a great joy, running a corporate workshop. It's all about repair, regenerative and thrive. And for me, much as I love my husband, Bill Tara, my body is my life partner. No one else is going to come along and say, hey, Marlene, this is what you need to be doing. I have to take responsibility because myself and I, this is my life partner. And when you take care of your physical and mental well-being, I can't tell you the energy surges from every cell in your body. I'm 70 next year. I feel the same as I did when I was 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. The only doctors we see are our friends, right?
And some of them are still our friends.
Yeah.
So this is a book which has been very important to us. It was written by our friend Colin Campbell. And it's a result of a study which he led, which was a cooperation between the Chinese government and Cornell University and Oxford University. And I highly encourage everybody to eat this. It was to eat it.
Yeah, eat it.
Eat it in your mind and chew on it and digest it well. Because this was one of the biggest epidemiological studies that was ever done. And it was looking at the relationship between specific diseases and the food that people eat. And it's a fantastic study, and you should just read it. It's incredible. When
it came out in 2005, we called Colin. He's one of our advisory board members on our Human Ecology project. And any books that we write, by the way, we put the funds into the charity so we can go work in the schools, and we give all the kids the books. So it's a win-win situation. Anyway, for me, whether I'm in a garden situation, which we're not right now, we're renting a house that doesn't have a garden, so I sprout like crazy. It's pennies. I sprout the most incredible bean sprouts, mung beans, broccoli sprouts. They're loaded with nutrition. So, you know, whether we are working with Action Against Hunger or working with Royal Families, the principles are the same. I don't bring in other foods. And for me, plants lead the way to all life. I'm very lucky to be known as the Queen of Beans since 1976. Because when I was very young, I wouldn't eat meat, and it's a big, long story, which I don't have time to get into, but I was coined the Queen of Beans, and it stuck with me. And for me, the two most important foods on the planet are grains and beans. They combine together for this complete protein. You don't need to have them in the one plate. The body's so clever, just collects amino acids, and it doesn't think that fingernail needs this, that strand of hair needs that. Trust me, you live with plants, you will thrive. Dr. Dennis Burkitt, a hero of mine, I read his book in 1972. It was called The Fibre Man, and fibre saved my life. He spoke way back then to me as a young girl about enhancing cellular function. Okay, I was probably a boring person. When I was young, I wasn't out in the discos. I was a researcher. I was always in at science and looking at stuff. But for me, if you think about the microbiome, we have 100 trillion cells in here. Can you imagine? And every second, 30 million of them are renewing. So we have this opportunity to understand that we can create incredible bacteria, which we have up to 5,000 species, by the way. Only 43% of you are human. 57% of you are bacteria. You can be changing that bacteria to good, healthy bacteria every second by changing 30 million cells. Is that not incredible? We are a self-healing organism.
Even while you're sitting, Mir. So the problem of being misfed has really been covered excellently in previous presentations. I just want to review it for a minute, because the issue is the diet that we eat, the diet that society eats, is a synthetic diet, and it's not designed for health, it's designed for profit, right? This is very important to remember. So that's what drives the whole thing. And it's about excesses. It's about the excess of fat. It's about the excess of salt. It's the excess of processed sugar. It's the excess of meat, right, in the diet, and dairy in the diet, and high chemical processing. All of these things combine to a perfect storm, right? And it's environmentally damaged. I mean, it was mentioned earlier, I think Chris mentioned it earlier, about soybeans and destroying the jungles. But one thing to remember is that only 6% of those soybeans go to humans. All the rest of those soybeans go to feeding animals. Yeah. So we might as well burn it, right? Just all goes to animal feed, right? And so you hear these stories about why you should use a particular food and not use a particular food for environmental reasons. Be very conscious of where that food is grown and what it's doing, right?
Well, that's enough of that bad news, because you see, I'm always the good fairy. I've always got the good news, and here's the good news. The bright side of ancient nutrition comes from the brightness. Think about when you're eating plants. You look at the plethora of vegetables and fruits in the supermarket, and all these polyphenols, they're not just antioxidants, they actually are prebiotics, which ferment in your gut and make probiotics. So polyphenols, all that beautiful coloured food, is a meal for your microbiome. So my top drawer foods, people laugh. We eat green vegetables 3 times a day. Someone spoke about iron. I mean, that's the best source to get, very bioavailable into your body. And the Bill laughs at me when I'm making lunch or dinner. He'll say, "Excuse me, wife, are you feeding me today as your husband, your client, your student?"
Or your experiment.
Well, he's 84, you see, so I keep monitoring year on year, checking him out, what's happening here, what's happening there.
Checking me out.
So when we look at inflammation in the body, we want to flood the body with anti-inflammatory foods, and greens for me are the kings. Because strong blood is like healthy soil, and I have a little mantra which I'd like to sing to you all. It's about food makes the blood, blood makes the cells, cells makes the tissue, tissue makes the organs, and here we be every day. It's that simple, right? So, you know,
people often ask, what do you eat if you're eating plant-based? Well, you have thousands of choices to make. The plant kingdom is much more diverse than the animal kingdom in terms of choices of foods and tastes, right? We have between 7,000 and 30,000 different kinds of plants that are edible on the planet, and we only eat a very narrow range of them, right?
And these images here are actually photographs from some of my books, which I've used from the greens particularly, you know, whether I'm making soups or ferments or steaming or salads or all sorts, right? It's just incredible. 2 minutes to go. Whether I'm training chefs for royal families, world business leaders, Bill and I have had students and clients from all over the world that are movies and arts, or I create recipes for Action Against Hunger. These recipes up here, or the menus up here, was one that I did this year for the Oxford Literary Festival. We have the lovely Sally Dunsmore, the director of that, and each year she invites me to come and create these plant-based menus for the gala dinners, all from plants.
In the past, when I first started doing this, right, eating this way, there was not a lot of information available. People would say, "Oh, there's no science behind this." Well, now that's completely opposite. There's so much science you can't believe it, and so the science is out there. It's been proven that a plant-based diet is not only healthy but is preventive.
Even the NHS has it on their website, From Cradle to Death.
Amazing.
There you go.
And after this presentation, starting next week, if you go on our website, you find references of some of the things that we've talked about today. So you can go and check them out yourself and look at the research. Right? Okay. I see somebody's hovering over
I
me.
know. So
you can tell we usually talk longer.
Our passion is really Mr. Macro, Mrs. Micro. We're trying to get people to connect the dots to understand that everything we put in our plate every day is not only feeding our own health, it's feeding the planetary health as well.
And please check out our books on Amazon. Right?
Great.
Thank you, thank you.